warm greetings and good evening to all. A warm welcome to all for another session of Friday Waters Club. Idea of Friday Waters is to wet the Fridays with fun-filled and yet fruitful activities for the future generation. Friday Waters has water activities, book reading, thesis club, and water arts. The focus of Water Thesis Club is on bringing the student scholars who have done or are doing a thesis alias research on water matters to the session in order to discuss with them the making of the thesis research and the issues around the subject covered. I'm Ekta Gupta, the moderator for today's thesis club session. I'm joined by Professor Sonia Gupta, Dean, School of Architecture and Planning, Oxford University, as a discussant for today's thesis club session. For today's session, we welcome Sheeba Amir to share her research on ecologies in transition, investigating hydrosocial complexities with urbanizing Gurgaon. Sheeba Amir is an architect and urbanist based in Leuven, Belgium. She is presently pursuing her PhD at the Department of Architecture, KU Leuven. In 2014, she was awarded by Erasmus Scholarship to pursue a master's degree in urbanism and strategic planning at KU Leuven. At the academic and professional level, she has worked with international organizations, public and private sector on various design and research projects. In the past 10 years, she has been involved in various initiatives in the field of the built environment, including projects in India, Nepal, Indonesia, and Belgium. She is also a regular contributor in My Livable City International magazine since 2016. Her research interests are pre-urban, peri-urban transformation, spatial planning, socio-ecological urbanism, risk and resilience, social innovation in spatial planning, humanitarian architecture, and grassroots innovations. Welcome again, Sheeba Amir. I invite you to present your presentation. Professor Sonia will join us shortly after the presentation. So welcome, Sheeba.
Thank you, Ekta. Thanks for the introduction and this opportunity to present my work. I'll go ahead with sharing my screen. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so as Ekta mentioned, I am a PhD at KU Leuven, and today I will be sharing a part of my research. This is also a paper that I have been working on, and hopefully soon it will be published. So it's titled Ecologies in Transition, and it will be focusing on emerging hydrosocial complexities in case of Gurgaon, which is an urbanizing city or peri-urban areas. It's what the focus of my PhD is. So my larger research it looks into the peri-urban areas, which are greatly impacted by the consequences of urbanization. But at the same time, I am arguing that peri-urban areas are not just defined by urban or the cities. They also have strong and diverse spatial and socio-ecological identities. But at the same time, they are very much connected to the concept of mega cities or mega urban regions. For example, in case of Gurgaon, we always associate it with Delhi or the NCR. And what my research focuses on is that how these mega regions or mega urban regions, they put a lot of pressure on their surrounding areas, their peripheries, which is quite visible in case of NCR, which when it was envisaged in 1985, its area since then has almost become double. So these areas keep on expanding and these peripheries keeps on reproducing. And this transformation is tremendous. The scale and impact is also great. For example, we can see in this slide, which is sort of a before and after image of Manesar, Gurgaon. So before it was industrial model town, it used to be these two small villages. And they used to have this agro-pastoral landscape, which has completely transformed. It's completely surrounded by these big box industrial typologies. And this is the case with several other traditional settlements in case of Gurgaon. Today, I will be discussing a bit about how this kind of landscape transformation, it changes the socio-ecological identities, or it also changes the nature-society relationships. So in this specific case, I am talking about the changing relationship between water and society. And I'll discuss a little bit about traditional hydraulic infrastructure of Gurgaon and what sort of social practices were there since medieval times, which you can still see today in the landscape, and how these relationships are transforming. So let's begin by understanding the regional hydrological system of Gurgaon. Gurgaon is a semi-arid landscape. So when we hear semi-arid, that means we're hearing it's sort of a hot climate or dry climate. We don't have any perennial river in case of Gurgaon, but we have Aravalli Hills from where the monsoon streams emerge, and they sort of um, fill the underground aquifers. The water moves through the Badshahpur drain, which is the main drainage channel of this region, and it joins the basin of Najafgarh, which then is further connected to Yamuna, and it drains the lake to some extent. So in this landscape, I wanted to emphasize that the monsoonal stream which emerged from the Aravalli Hills are really, really crucial. So I was able to get some pictures from the site, so you can see these small valleys or small lakes which gets created seasonally. You might not see them in summer, but they're very, very crucial in recharging the underground aquifers as they move through the landscape, not just in the hills, but from their movement from the hills till they meet the basin. And now we move to the traditional infrastructure. So in case of Gurgaon, we have two important water infrastructure, the pond system, which we call Johar, and Banth or the embankment system. So together, they sort of create this holding landscape for Gurgaon, through which the communities were able to survive the harsh and dry climate of this area. So this is sort of a map which I made by tracing the movement of the possible movement of the streams as they would be emerging from Aravalli Hills. So this is sort of based on the topography of this region, and the dots are the ponds which are still present in the landscape. There were many more ponds in this area. So I have been working on even sort of mapping them, but they are still not published yet. So, but we can sort of see that how the water would move and fill these ponds, and then people would hold this water for their everyday activities. And another important thing is that I wanted to highlight the temples that are there in the hills that I will be discussing a bit later. So I am arguing that the kind of a landscape that has been created by the natural hydrological system and the man-made system, it's not just important for us, but this is a multi-species landscape. So because these used to be and the continue to be agro-pastoral landscape, there is a significant number of cattle population here. There are transhuman pastoralists who move through Gurgaon seasonally, and there are local pastoralists. So, and besides, in case of Najafgarh, as we know, it's an important bird area along with Basai and other wetlands like Sultanpur. So we have to understand them not just from human perspective, but more than human perspective. At the same time, they are not just ecologically important, but socially important. For example, these used to be the important social spaces, important public spaces. People would plant trees there, and those trees, which hold even social religious importance, then they would become habitat for different birds, insects, or other animals. And then villages can hold their weekly meetings or their everyday tasks under these trees or around these temples, sorry, around these ponds. And then their importance is further established by marking these places with important cultural and religious institutions. For example, if we would move through Aravalli, we are well aware of the presence of Mangar Bani, but there are other Banis, and you can see presence of these small shrines, which are sometimes they are called it a Gram Devata's shrine or a village god shrine or their ancestral shrines. So these are usually to mark the presence of the water, to say that it is a socio-ecologically critical space. And I think it's more what I have understood, that putting a temple is a more recent phenomena. It's only since last few decades that we see it in case of Gurgaon. But there would be markers of socio, let's say, the cultural importance. But now we see a lot of temples, but it's still following the same theme, that part of so many rituals since the day we are born, since till the day we die. Its presence is always important. So I try to draw this section to explain the movement of the water through a section of Gurgaon where we can see that the water, when it comes through the seasonal rains, then it passes through the fissures, it recharges the aquifers. But then we create this sort of a man-made system to try to hold this water so that we can utilize it for our economies in terms of, agriculture or even pastoralism. And before it finally goes and become part of the basin, which in itself a very critical system. Uh, yeah. But then we see that this system is now disrupted. There are so many changes. We see urbanization everywhere and anywhere, and it's not really respecting the landscape. If we see these ponds which are still present within Gurgaon, most of them have become a source of, wastewater. Our wastewater is diverted into these ponds, and which leads to their pollution. For example, this was a really sad picture that I saw in Ghata village. And the temples are still present, but these are ponds have just become garbage dumps. There's a lot of construction waste around. There is everyday, the municipal waste, everything is just we are throwing into our ponds. There are still, you can see some trees around which were probably, planted many years back. But unfortunately, the way we are using them, or, sort of polluting them, they sort of have lost their identity, can say. And of course, it just not impacts the quantity of the water or quality of the water. It impacts the entire biodiversity. We are also seeing a lot of engineered infrastructure around the landscape. There are many wastewater drains, or the water supply drains, which are there to meet the demand of urbanizing city. On the other hand, the traditional drains which we used to have, the drainage channels, as I showed in the earlier map of Badshapur, we are increasingly covering them. So it's the connection which we used to have with the water by its physical presence or associating with our rituals and other our culture is completely lost. It's there are places where you cannot even guess that if there is a drain passing by that area. And then we continue to extract resources. We continue to just through the groundwater we continue to use it, but there's no possibility of recharge. For example, this was a photo from one of my field work. We are seeing more and more informal fishing in Najafgarh, and the fishing activities is it changes the ecology of this wetland, but at the same time there's a lot of this kind of disturbance is not good for the migratory birds which comes during the winter, and you're also sort of creating a competition in their food base. And this was for the Basai wetland. There is a proper fishing ponds there, and this is the kind of a feed, the waste, sort of chicken waste, we are feeding these fishes. And I also noticed that there is fishing of catfish, which is banned in many parts of India, and it is an invasive species. And then it can the water, as it moves to other wetlands, these species can travel and completely, alter the ecologies of other wetlands as well. And then the results are quite obvious. This was a mapping of increasing urbanization and number of tube wells and the depth of the water table. And we can clearly see that as urbanization is going up, so is your water table depth. It's going down and down. We have almost reached like 35 and 40 meters below groundwater levels. And this impact agriculture and our food security, because almost 90% of agriculture in Gurgaon is dependent on bore wells for its irrigation. So we continue to extract water, and then there's less and less water for the farmers, and then they are shifting because of that to wastewater for irrigation, which again impacts the quality of the food that we are eating, quality of vegetables or other food items. So on the one hand, we are saying that we have water scarcity, but on the other hand, we have a lot of water. So we see urban flooding every season, and it keeps getting worse and worse. Of course, there is also the question of change in climate. Especially in context of Gurgaon, the rainfall are getting worse and worse. So I think this last year we almost had half number of rainfall days, but the amount of rainfall which falls in particular days is much more than normal. So this is the kind of spaces, this is the kind of cities that we have to live in. So I am not really reaching any kind of conclusion or solution at this point. But I am trying to say that, we have to really change our perspective. We need to have a more pluralistic social and environmental perspective where we are thinking about equity, multi-species accessibility, and community engagement. We have to identify that once upon a time we used to have this really perfect infrastructure which was working for us, which had been working for us for centuries. So we have to identify what was making it work. Was it the social institutions? Was it the community knowledge? And if it was, we have to really get deeper into this understanding, if this is what was contributing to our capacity. And in my PhD, I am trying to execute this mapping. So I'm trying to map the existing ponds. I'm also trying to map the historical ponds and an embankment system. So perhaps we can juxtapose them with the kind of planning we do, the urban planning and the master plan we do, and see how we can possibly retain these spaces within the landscape, but also at the same time, how can we create more such multifunctional spaces? For example, in urban planning system of Gurgaon, we still don't see planned green open spaces. And how are we thinking in those terms? And the typology of the ponds was present in case of traditional settlements. It's not present in the modern typology. So how can we think in those terms? So these are the few, I would say, the points that I have come so far. I will stop my presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheeba and Sheeba. And we are waiting for Sonia ji.
Yes, I'm here, but I
I
might have
think,
to break. Am I heard? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, super.
hear you.
Okay, right. So I just said that I might have to break in the middle of a sentence, but never mind. So yes, Shiva, you brought forward extremely pertinent and very significant, very worrisome points before us. And I'm just wondering, since you're doing your PhD, I'm just wondering whether or not you have the chance to look at any urban settlement that has done well, that has been able to take lessons. It's because somehow I feel that we do not take lessons. That's what I feel, in the sense that uh, we are repeating our mistakes. If we have been to some of the cities outside the country, whatever mistakes they were making, we are making 40 years later. Regarding how, like you said, all the points that you brought about the hydrological basin, the way the embankments and the water uh, interacted together, and how the markers were religious structures, or for to let people know. In spite of that, we've raised everything down. So, is there any chance that you've seen an example of where this has been actually taken into the consideration?
Thanks for your question. I think I will in my PhD. I started with the historical perspective. This for this one reason. The traditional system, our infrastructure or our settlements, I think they were working. So in itself, it is one of the example. But to say this in contemporary context, I wouldn't say I cannot point out one specific case where I would say that this has been working. But I think in Belgian context, I have noticed one thing, and it's what is these days is it's what is happening in this urban discourse. There is a lot of focus on village urbanism. So. I think in our context, we have sort of just accepted that it's going to be a peri-urban and then it's going to be an urban. And urban is the answer. We just have to look how we have to achieve urban in some way. So I raise this question that can we not remain peri-urban or can we not remain rural in some way? And when we say let's stay rural, that does not mean that we do not do anything or we let our traditional settlements be the way they are, but we look at ways we can have some sort of uh, and development patterns in those settlements, or can we have some kind of typologies which can let us remain in a more resilient way, but at the same time there is growth. How we can have this kind of typologies in Belgian context. I would not say there is a situation of peri-urban, but there is a growing concern of urban sprawl. So the villages here, they continue to expand. The density is really low, but still they continue to be scattered in this landscape. And there are growing concern here also that how we can ecologically have, I would not say protect, but have some sort of intervention to control this sprawl. And in to move towards a solution, there they are working here on this kind of a village urbanism, and how you can densify so you can let you can and you do not let all of the landscape which is ecologically crucial get impacted by this urbanization pattern. And also in terms of built typologies, how we can have typologies which are not they do not have to be specifically like urban, but they can be more community oriented, which might work better in case of a village. So I think we also need to sort of, in practice and in theory, need to explore this possibility that how we can go beyond this just very urban focused dialogue. I think Sonia is not here at the moment.
So, okay, so I think I can go ahead with the questions. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, thank you.
I can go ahead.
Please go ahead, Ekta, please go ahead.
Yes, please. So, Shiva, as we are discussing about another question is the map on page 4 shows the Badshahpur channel running west to southeast. However, there is another channel running from Najafgarh Lake towards northeast and connecting to Yamuna. Any comments on the hydrological balance of this entire basin?
I have not really worked on the entire basin, but in this context, I think I would like to discuss a little bit on how in colonial perspectives we have problematized the flood. So in case of Gurgaon, urban flooding is a big issue. The farmers, they really want to drain the lake, and this had been the focus since colonial periods. It was not earlier completely connected to Yamuna, and this was the main aim, to connect it to Yamuna and just drain it. And this is what we are looking at currently, that we want to drain the lake and give the agriculture land back to farmers. It's also a big political agenda. But if we look at the our history, we have been living, we have been crossing this water land boundary quite well. We were able to use Najafgarh as agricultural lands, but at the same time as a basin also. So I think multifunctionality in landscape is very critical, because our demands in for natural resources are continuously increasing. So we sort of kind of find a middle solution. So how we can continue to have agriculture and continue to have the water as well. I haven't looked it completely, like I am more focused on Gurgaon. But in case of Najafgarh, as it enters Delhi, pollution is also a huge issue. We are diverting all our, waste water drains into it, and we do not separate our just the storm water drains, or there's so much of industrial waste that is being diverted here without being treated. So that's also a concern. This, I think, yeah, I will just stop here on this topic.
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know the video will begin, but I'm back. So yes, you were just getting to the interesting point about you're being in Belgium, and we are hoping that there would be lots of good examples that have been learned from classical ways. And I'm not sure that has happened. So if you've already, I'm not going to prolong that. I'm just wondering that, you did touch on very lightly on the fact that when embankments and as well as ponds and the social, religious and environmental connections are very important. You just did mention it, but could you just maybe elaborate on that, so we can also carry it as a lesson?
I think there are there's some very good examples of some activities already happening in Gurgaon. I think Gurujal have taken up this initiative very well of identifying different ponds and how we can revive them. I think, but I think from social perspective, it's not just a comment for Gurujal, but overall, I think we need to look at the community perspective. So I mentioned this, that the typology of pond is present only in traditional settlements, and there is a sort of disconnect from community. They do not want to anymore engage with maintaining the ponds, because of course there are deeper issues of ownership, or how it is no more clean and pure water, so they do not really have much use of it. But I think we need to bring this to also in peri-urban context or urban context, where how as a community we can look more deeper into it, how we can come together to find these systems back in this kind of new typology. Because I think it's not, we cannot just say, let's just take the temple of one village, or the pond of one village, and let's just focus on this. But let's maybe find more of such things, more of such I have termed them as landscape commons, so which were quite well present in the traditional settlements, but our landscape commons are missing. What are the landscape commons in our urban typologies, or in this kind of a very intense urbanization? So I think and of course we can, if it's not necessary that we have to connect to them, to the religious markers, because now we have sort of a diverse population. So let's find our social markers. How I don't know what are those social markers, but we perhaps need to come together and to think in that context. I have
Actually,
shared some few things about
very well
yeah.
in the sense that there is a tradition and a history in our country of religious actually marking our social calendar. And
Yeah.
therefore, why is it not that religious structures can also become social markers in our life rather than being only religious? So that's a very nice way of putting it. And I'm looking at one of your slides where you show wastewater sewage disposal in Gurgaon. And we were told when we were very young that waste is not waste unless you waste it. And it is so true of water. Wastewater is a resource. I'm just wondering why we always think, oh, we are just throwing water into another lake and we are polluting it. We need not be polluting it. Right? So the lessons that we learned in Gurgaon study, is there a way are coming about whereby we are thinking of natural systems of water treatment, wastewater, if you must call it wastewater treatment. So that's a continuous, seamless, organic way of looking at wastewater. Do you observe anything either in where you live at Belgium or or in your study area?
Yes, I did notice it in Gurgaon. Wastewater is quite a resource in case of rural Gurgaon, and I have seen that farmers really rely on it. But I think the problem here is with the that I am looking at the wastewater is it's not always, you can say, treated to a level. So wastewater irrigation is a common phenomena in many parts of the world, but I think it's the mixing of waste that is sort of problematic in our context. And I also noticed on site that it's not, it goes to water treatment plants, but maybe it's not always treated. So we need to look at that infrastructure part a little bit more seriously, and how we can not mix our waste. For example, not mix the industrial waste in particularly like in case of Vatshapur. It has a lot of industries around it. So how we can sort of maintain that quality? Indeed, we cannot waste the wastewater. It is a resource, and we have to, reintegrate. And I did come across that the Gurgaon is targeting this fact, and there will be more water treatment facilities, and Gurgaon is aiming for, reusing most of this water. So we have to see how we can, but of course, always at individual level, we can do something about it. And I would acknowledge that I think there are efforts in this direction by the government, I think.
It's good to know that. It's good to know that there is a plan in place. Yeah. So, and the tube burning, it was so alarming that you've shown that graph. It's where the depth of water table is going down faster than we are actually taking out the water.
Just a moment, Sonia.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think there's an echo in your voice. So
There's an echo?
if you can check.
Okay.
Echo and some disturbance is there.
Yes, I think it's from the background. It's all right. I can. Yeah.
But can you make out what I'm saying? Yes.
Yes, yes.
Otherwise, I will stop. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so the tuber thing, it was so alarming to see that graph of yours that you've done. So do we have a prediction? Is this in the public domain that this is happening, or is this something that you've put together?
This is something I have put together from the analysis, but it's very much in public domain. People know it. In every season, we will have a news from some prominent newspaper saying that this year we went down to 40, this year we went down to 45. So I do not have a projection, and also I think I would not rely on statistics so much. This graph was sort of to indicate that this is where we are leading, but unfortunately, we do not have complete statistics. There are so many bore wells in all the villages and all across the landscape of Gurgaon, which we haven't accounted for. Nobody knows the exact number of those. Um, it is a huge concern in Gurgaon. I have myself during the field seen these tankers traveling all across the landscape, and there have been news of water tanker mafia going on. So it's not, if we will continue on this path, we this path this the kind of a graph that I showed, it won't show us good pictures. So I think we have to really turn this one way movement of the water into two ways. So not just extract, but how we can also recharge the groundwater. That must be the focus for us for the next coming years. Otherwise, the news is very clear for us. I think it's in case of Delhi, in case of Gurgaon, every summer we do not have enough water. We're looking, running everywhere for, to get the water. So this was just the graph was I made this in at the beginning of my research to try to understand that it's a huge problem for us.
The reason I actually brought this forward is that I do know this was maybe 20 years ago or so, little more than 20 years ago, or around that time. They had this huge program of rainwater harvesting in a very active way. And so water is water. If you recharge it at my house, let's say in Hyderabad, the water will rise in Mumbai. It is like that. So we don't know where the water will be actually, water table will be improving.
Yeah.
But it happened. It really happened in Delhi that there was a huge project, and a lot of areas of Delhi did profit with their water tables. And I always keep wondering what happened. Now when I read the newspaper, I wonder what happened over there. So there must have been a huge disconnect in what we did right after that. Yeah, so after this, I think one more question is definitely coming up on my mind is that you did say that you are not trying to draw any conclusions as yet. You're looking at mapping so that you can, am I correct? You were looking at a lot of,
Yes.
The mapping of structures, the mapping of what is and what was traditionally to be able to predict what we should be able to do. But as optimists, we always hope that we are what I call as a the immediate one is not perhaps the new of our working, but a long-term direction to move forward in countries that we are losing our
We're not hearing you, Sonia. Not hearing you. Sheeba, can you hear it? No, not at all.
No, not really. But
No.
I think she is asking something about how we can move ahead in the future.
Yes.
So, Mansi, will you take?
Yes.
Yes. I
Maybe,
think I did.
Sonia, we mute you, and Sheeba, you got the gist of it to go
Yes.
further. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay, yeah. So it's really a very, very difficult question. And as I was giving a lot of time in problematizing this, I was not at the moment looking at the solutions. But I think I did mention that already there is some work going on in case of Gurgaon, where we have already highlighted that ponds are essential and we need to look at those other traditional infrastructure. um, but of course there are examples, we can always look at other examples. I think with my studies in Belgium, I think we came across some policy based solutions. I think in Netherlands for some years there has been project going on about which focuses on room for river, so which a room is in English is space for river or space for water. So I think we have to really look in this landscape space for water. We have been so busy in just building anywhere and everywhere, covering all of it, that we're not thinking about the space for water. And that's why in every monsoon the water takes its space wherever it can find, so it floods our streets. Now it's flooding our homes. This year has had been really horrible, I think, from what I saw. So I think there has to be these large scale policy based interventions where we really identify that we cannot just keep selling each parcel of land just to build on it, just to make profit out of it. There has to be space for nature, there has to be space for water. We need large public open spaces, which even socially very, very critical for us. It's not just that we need to recharge the water, but for our well-being we need those spaces. So I think at policy level we must start looking into those prospects, though there have been quite a lot of interventions. But sadly, in at master plan level, I haven't seen any such policy or any such intervention which is saying let's start making big multifunctional landscapes. Let's start making what for some time has been popular, the sponge cities, or where this water can go, where we can. So I think this is one aspect we have to really look into. But of course, and then at local level, at individual level, we all can do our part. uh, I think this is water. It's not just a problem of Gurgaon, but we of course have this problem at global level. Even in Belgium, this last 2 years back, we had quite devastating floods, which were not expected. But then you have to always, revise your decisions or rethink what we can, do in these kind of the challenges that we are facing every day, new and new challenges. So unfortunately we are not even looking at the basics, so how we will move towards more drastic steps for climate change. We're not even able to get our everyday water relations right. So how can we be more resilient in terms of our future? So these are the kind of discussions that we must have, and I think this is what W4W have been doing. That we have to talk about it more. Also, in case of traditional settlements, I think I was not. I have been I have been visiting Gurgaon for a very long time, but I did not know the kind of ponds we had, the kind of structure we had, the kind of history we had for this landscape. It always seemed that Gurgaon did not had a history. It was just some place, and then all of a sudden we just had these very fancy, very elite kind of urban development. It took me some time to figure out what this landscape was, what was its potential, how we were living in the history. So the point is not to go back to the history, but point is to how what we can possibly learn from the history. And I am glad that these kind of discussions have been going on. I am not just the first person to talk about this. But I think we need more, we need more push to in this direction. And possibly, I think this kind of the kind of mapping that I have been doing, it is aimed at to start these discussions. So when you see this kind of a map that where you can have an idea that already there are so many ponds, or there used to be much more. I think there used to be twice or thrice of what I have already shown. So that this was a system, this was a network, this was working for us. And possibly that's why we should go back to, we should try to revive this kind of a thing. And then I think, because as a PhD and working in theories, I think also there we need this kind of discussion. In Indian context, we are reaching that point, but I think we are not there yet. But this discussion has to be there, that these spaces are socio-ecological system. They are not just peri-urban or urban. We have to really integrate ecology in our everyday discussion. I think that that discussion is still missing, because I'm still coming across projects in Gurgaon which are similar to the projects 10 years back, 15 years back. So why are we not changing our thought in how our built environment has to be? So these are the kind of things that came across my mind in almost 4 years of my PhD. And I am looking forward to publish more work, and hopefully I can contribute in some way, in some significant way in this discussion.
Now I would like to invite Dr. Mansi to take the further questions.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ekta, for initiating and coordinating this session. And Sheeba, yes, wonderful. And congratulations. I know you are coming towards the closure of your PhD as a degree, but I'm sure it's a beginning of a new way of looking at architecture, planning, and design in your case. I have some observations from your work, and whatever Sonia has asked, I'm going to add further and not repeat any one of them. First is that because it's a PhD, I would really like to know if you have, in this presentation, maybe you have kept the theoretical framework out of the discussion. And if that is so, I would like to know what kind of theoretical framework you are applying in your PhD.
So in my PhD, I took socio-ecological systems approach as a theoretical framework. This has been explored earlier by a few scholars in Indian context from a very systematic perspective. So more about, let's say, mathematical equations or quantitative ways of figuring out the system's resilience and its vulnerability. So yes, my in my PhD, I'm saying that peri-urban landscapes are socio-ecological systems, and how when you see so far in Gurgaon, there have been discussions, a lot of discussions about land, discussions about economy. There have been some focus separately on Najafgarh Lake, and some discussions on Aravalli Hills. But I am saying that we have to think it as an integrated system. So I'm applying the sociological systems perspective, and I'm trying to figure out what are the vulnerabilities that are arising in this landscape transformation. So landscape transformation is the main theme that drives my thesis, that I'm saying that the landscape in which these traditional settlements were embedded in a very systematic way, by acknowledging the ecology, by acknowledging the physical qualities of the landscape. We have completely erased that. We have completely forgot that the landscape existed here. So I'm trying to bring out those layers of the landscape, and I'm saying that the scale of transformation of landscape is extensive, and it is going to have a lot of impact on our resilience. So my PhD brings out the specific vulnerabilities which are coming up from these kind of interactions. For example, I mentioned that fishing was not a very prominent thing in this landscape earlier. So now we are having fishing ponds everywhere, or let's say informal fishing. And then you bring a species which is not a fish species, which is not native to this land. So when that specific fish species interact with the aquatic ecosystem, how it changes and why is this fishing happening, because this fishing to some extent is happening because now we have more diverse population here. We have fish eating people here, which is normal for a multi, for the kind of a city Gurgaon is. So we are changing our food habits, so it's like a social system is changing, and it is then impacting an ecological system. So we have to sort of combine these things together. Or for example, there's so much of construction waste which is being generated in Gurgaon, and then we dump, it's not properly being treated. So when you dump your construction waste on soil, how it changes your soil, because then it's going to have chemical reactions, it's going to then change the physical structure of the soil. And once that structure is changed, it's going to impact your vegetation. And once your vegetation is changed, it's going to impact your other fauna, the population of the birds. So I'm saying that you have to really link the ecology with the social aspect and bring these very specific kind of vulnerabilities in this landscape.
Wonderful. You remind me of almost 28 years ago when I did my master's at SEPT University. I was working on very similar drawings with all these dots as lakes and interconnectivity of theirs, then villages and social and public realm between them. So it's a kind of a deja vu for me. But another important aspect is I did also my PhD on social ecological system of urban lake governance and sustainability in India, where I looked at lakes of Jaipur, Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Bhopal. So, and I remember the diagram which you were showing with all the lakes and villages and social aspects and interconnectivity. And I'm just trying to understand, and you made a very strong point that we almost considered during the process of urbanization and urban planning that villages did not exist. We planned it on a blank canvas. We almost made them non-existent, and here they were very much there, at that included water bodies and villages, and now they are amalgamated in it without considering their presence. But what strikes with the scholarship like what you have done and what I did almost 30 years, 28 years ago, is that despite the fact that we are continuously teaching the relevance of water bodies and water resources in the landscape, and when we are talking also about landscape urbanism and all kinds of conceptual ideas, our urban planning has still not taken even one neighborhood design with a water body. I have not seen urban designers, urban planners, architects designing neighborhoods, and building a water body, just like our villagers did, because we are almost considering that water will be taken care. We do design green spaces, but green spaces are also, I call it flap, which is space left after planning. So whatever has to be sold, the remaining is green space. But the point I made 28 years ago also, imagine designing a neighborhood and first putting the water body and then designing the residential, commercial and everything, because this is exactly what happened in the traditional time. And you very well said that we don't need to copy the tradition, but then we have to at least respect the topography, physiography, also our social and traditional way of living with the nature. Because what Netherlands is doing is trying to correct the mistakes they did for 500 years ago.
Exactly.
The whole Rhine basin for that matter. And we are still not learning to put this whole system in place. Because like in Gujarat, we have town planning scheme, where it is very much possible that we start with the water body and then we do the rest of the planning, but we are still not doing it. What do you think we can really we can do to bring this planning approach in our Indian planning system? Because see, we are teaching now water at least superficially in architecture planning, not thoroughly, and we are considering its presence. But what are the steps we should be taking?
It's a very, very difficult question. So I think it's very interesting that many young architects, many young designers have understood this to certain extent, and in our teaching paradigm also we are seeing changes. But I think in our urban planning is also very political. It's very much linked to the politics, and you might have a solution, but it might not be politically accepted. So I think along with the designer, the general public has to be aware of what they want. And I think we need to work on this part also, that how to make people aware of the advantages of certain. I think as an architect, as an urban designer, your role is not just to design things. It's to as an expert give people what they want, but like in a best way. How that you can do something in a best way. So I think if we can make our planning a little bit more participative. There are participative steps, but I think there are also very much deeper discussions on social aspects, like who is participating, who is allowed to participate, and who is allowed to contribute in these discussions. These are, again, I mean, these are the kind of question that might not be solved by one PhD or two PhDs, but yes, we are seeing these discussions. I'm saying that unfortunately, that first we erased the settlements, that there are no villages, and then we also erased the people. I mean, it's very weird that it's very difficult for me to see that there would be some kind of a project happening in a village, very next to a village, and the villagers have no say in it, or they would just accept this position.
Non-existent.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And nobody is
Look at
acknowledging.
everywhere. Look at everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I understand, okay, that this used to be an agricultural land and they sold it and they made some money out of it. But that does not mean that that community evaporated. So
No.
it's there. So it's there, and the new people, or new, I don't know if new, saying new is also controversial, but there are other people there. So how do those two talk? So is this, you cannot just go on creating, you know, parks. You cannot just go on creating urban forests. No, it's everyone's forest. It's not an urban forest. So how do we make the new typologies, um, work for everyone? So those are very challenging questions for the designers. I have sort of in last few years moved away from design as such, but of course these are the challenging things for the designers, and this is what the practice is very crucial. I mean, the practice is going to put things on ground. So I think at every steps, I think we are going in that direction, but at every step we need to work harder. And but I do not know, I don't have an answer to this, but why do we still keep repeating the mistake is also what Sonia said. I don't understand, why cannot we just jump 40 years ahead, and why do we have to repeat what West has already done rather than just learning from what they are doing now? So, but I think with more and more people, having these discussions, I think we can possibly, let's be hopeful, change this kind of a paradigm and
I
have
think we have, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, that's it.
I think we have to run a course on leapfrogging, which is not happening.
Yeah.
Apart from the very serious problem that architecture, urban design, and planning is not teaching water, for which I am fighting for 20 years already. That please teach 1 or 2 credits of water, which is because for us, water is waterfront development and waterscape. And it reminds me, Ashim is here, so I want to bring out his work as well. where he presented on W for W and on Wednesdays for Water, and Ashim and Hana were there, and they were presenting riverscapes, and Ashim really focused on grounding and mapping of the riverscape in the Himalayan context and all. So maybe we invite Ashim also to even pitch in something here. But before I take the leave from you, I have an observation on one of your map, because mapping, you are using it as a tool for your research. The map which you have made about urbanization and water table and all, please make sure that you have put the water table in the reverse order. Because you wanted to show it with the urbanization, and I think that can have a serious impact in reading the map. Have the water table in the depth manner, because your depth is going up. Depth has to go down, and water table also is going down. So there, because it's also cognizance, it's also human cognizance, you know. So when I looked at that map, I was really thinking, no, this map has to be reworked. So keep in mind, because it may pop up in your defense or sometime by the reviewer. And so mapping and grounding, if it is your strong tool, I strongly believe that that also needs to be taught separately in architecture and planning schools, that how to read maps. Because planning in India is still water, it is still not a water planning or integrated land and water planning. We are still stuck with land use planning in India. So let's see how it goes further. But you are right. People like us, we have to keep working and keep talking about it. You know what? I just want to share with you that whenever I'm going for jury and people are designing these neighborhoods, I have never come across in last 20 years any student daring to design a water body and then doing the township, because that is where things will change. Because if they are not daring in school to take up a water body project and then do the housing and commerce and everything, they can never dare to do it in practice. You know, first you have to start daring to do it at school, and teachers have to encourage doing it. I mean, I know when I was teaching more regularly, I could not convince students to first have the water body and then have the settlement. Even if it is a township, I mean, which we have done a couple of townships projects where we have first placed our water body depending on the physiograph. Then the overall layout. You can still attain that 60-70% of residential road. It's all about planning there. But that is not ingrained in our head, that we have to also plan the water body in the topography, in the physiography. So maybe, thank you so much, Sheeba. We can just go on and on, because you touched my bachelor's thesis to PhD in this project. Ashim, would you like to add something, or maybe some tips, because I know both of you are doing PhD from same place, so maybe it's a good idea. Ashim, would you like to add something?
No, Mansi. Yeah,
okay.
Not today. Yeah.
Over to you, Ekta, and thank you so much, Sheeba.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Wait.
So, thank you, Sheeba. I am enjoying this presentation, and because importantly, because it is connecting me to the villages and the lost roots on which I am working, that connecting to roots. Our motive is to every corner needs a plant and connecting to the roots. And we are forgetting the roots. Then how to connect with all this? So now you very beautiful that why do we need the urbanization? Can't we live the way we are easy? So urbanization is creating a lot of problems. There on the water, people are living in very, very small houses in the congested places, a lot of huge waste. And the most important is everybody wants land. Nobody wants good life, good health, fresh water, fresh air, fresh food, healthy food. Everybody wants the land. Everybody will say that I need a home. No, not a home. I need a land. I need a flat. I need a house, not the home. So this is my take from the session, that we need the homes. We need a happy, healthy life, not just the built areas. So built areas are just the buildings, and in buildings we can't live alone. So water is the basic thing, the beautiful thing that you said, that Mansi has mentioned, that there is nobody has planned the water body. So can't we do this when we are developing the peripheries of the urbans and talking about the villages? So keeping those villages as they are, just solving their problems and not connecting them to the cities and creating the urbanization. So this is my point on this. The other things are work for everyone. Yes, it's a beautiful thing that work for everyone, not just the humans, for the natural resources, as well as our other organisms and villagers. And I have a point here. Whenever there is a talk about development, whether it is building some city, some urbanization, or some infrastructure like the roads and something. So the government or the agencies buy the land from the villagers. And every villagers, I am in touch with few of the villagers who have, were doing the farming. And then they used to say, now we are selling the land because it is a highway is going on, we will get a good price. So is it only the government or only the private agencies or our own greed, which is depleting this biodiversity, this so-called jungle, as you said, the urban forest. Urban forest is not for the one person or the one this area. It is for everybody. Forests are for everybody. So repeating the mistakes, yes, we are repeating the mistakes. We are learning from our rich traditional architect. We are just building the new ones and not learning from it. So these are the beautiful, this is the mind opening takeaways from both of you, and it's a very good session. And I would love that people watch and learn from it and start working on the environment and natural resources first, and after that the buildings. So once it is done, then we will be able to cover up and manage the water as well as the floods as well as the pollution. So I would like to add that puja, we are very religious people, but we forget that religion is not just going to the temples, not going to the religious places. It's about worshipping the nature and taking care of the nature and the surroundings. With these words, I would like to say thanks to Sheeba for joining us for this session. Thank you, Mansi, for giving me this opportunity to be with these sessions. Now it's time to announce for further sessions. So next week, Wednesday for water session is on 25th September 2024 at 5 to 6 p.m. 12 do join IASC Asia series discussion on desalination in the 21st century, solution or distraction. The joining link will be shared on the chat box. We shall continue with Friday Water Thesis Club and other Friday Water sessions. We shall continue with Monday Munching using with Women for Water. Follow us on w4w.e. Join us on our social media links for the regular updates on our upcoming sessions. Thanks a lot for joining us and watching our sessions. Thanks.